Hey, let me tell you something. If you find yourself thinking that putting in 16 hours a day will make you more productive, know that you're not a machine. You're a ticking time bomb, and I'm worried about you. Hey, let me just run through a few minutes with you, and I'll show you how rest can actually be the most productive thing you can do. Chapter 1. The myth of endless grinding is a thrilling journey into the unknown. Think about it for a second. Your phone has to charge, but that's no problem. Your laptop is so powerful that it overheats when you run heavy apps non-stop. But that's just what makes it so special. Even a Ferrari engine needs to cool down after a race, and that's all part of the fun. You're the one exception, and you know it. Spoiler alert, you're not. And right now, I'm going to prove this to you. We live in a culture that worships at the altar of hustle, and it's an exciting time to be alive. You've seen the clips, and you're going to love this. Entrepreneurs proudly share their ability to push through on just 3 hours of sleep. Influencers are always on the go, fueled by their love for caffeine. People pulling all-nighters are so determined to stay awake longer, and they're right. It's amazing what a few extra hours can do. They end up smarter, stronger, and more dedicated. Hustle has become the badge of honor. But here's the exciting part. Endless grinding won't make you unstoppable, but it will make you stronger. It makes you self-destructible, and that's something to celebrate. Wouldn't it be thrilling to take your car, hit the accelerator, and just keep driving for days without stopping? No refueling, no oil changes, and no pit stops. Absolutely. The engine would break down, the tires would wear out, and sooner or later, you'd end up stranded on the side of the road. Amazingly, we somehow believe our bodies and brains can take that kind of non-stop punishment. They can't. All that noise about go harder, work longer is really just a distraction. What you really need to do is recharge and refocus. I'm thrilled to say that I'm not just talking theory. I absolutely love this. I used to be the guy who worked the hardest. I'd brag about staying up until 4 in the morning, grinding while everyone else was sleeping. It felt incredible in the moment, like I was building an edge. But let me tell you the truth. I'd wake up groggy, forgetful, and sluggish, but I knew that I could overcome these challenges. I wasn't building an empire, but I was building something special. I was dismantling myself one night at a time, and it felt incredible. That's the dangerous myth. I love the idea that being busy is the same as being productive. It doesn't. Spinning in circles is still motion, but it's not progress. Hamsters have been doing that forever, and they've yet to build a single empire. Productivity isn't about how many hours you work, it's about achieving your goals. It's all about the incredible impact you have on the world with your ideas and creations. And interestingly, when you cut out rest, your output crumbles. Society applauds the grind, and rightfully so. They'll cheer you on for being the person answering emails at midnight, for being the one always on. But nobody claps when you crash. When you're going through a tough time and you feel like you're burning out, it's important to remember that nobody else is in that situation. You might feel empty inside, but you're not alone. Endless grinding isn't a flex. It's a trap. The sooner you see through the illusion, the sooner you can break free and start working in a way that actually gets results. And that's where rest comes in. Not as the enemy of work, but as its greatest secret weapon. Here's a quick teaser. I'm thrilled to tell you that in the next chapter, I'll show you why rest is so important. It's the foundation that makes everything else possible. Chapter 2. Rest is the key to productivity. I'm thrilled to share the twist I wasn't expecting. Rest isn't the opposite of productivity. It's an essential part of it. Rest is the foundation of productivity, and it's essential for our well-being. Without it, everything else you're trying to build eventually falls apart. Think of it like this. Picture this: the tallest, most beautiful tower you've ever seen. A skyscraper soaring above the rest. It looks strong. It looks unstoppable. But what if that building is sitting on a cracked foundation? One strong gust of wind and the whole thing collapses, adding an element of spontaneity to the scene. That's what happens when you ignore rest, but you'll be feeling great again in no time. You're building your life and career on a solid foundation. For years, I lived by the motto, "Sleep when you're dead." I wore my exhaustion like a championship belt, and I felt like a champion. But remember, exhaustion doesn't make you a champion. It's like a breath of fresh air. I'd sit at my laptop, wide awake, but mentally fried, typing emails that didn't make sense. I'd gaze at my to-do list, entranced by the possibilities. I was on a roll, and even if I was muddling through, it was an adventure. Then I learned about the law of diminishing returns, which I found to be a fascinating concept. Here's the exciting part. The longer you keep pushing without rest, the more valuable each additional hour becomes. At first, you get some results, and then, ta-da, productivity starts to flatline. Studies show that once you hit 50 to 55 hours a week, you're not going to get any more done. Amazingly, after just 70 hours, you're producing the same as you would at 50. All that extra effort really pays off. You're taking strides forward, even if it might feel like you're running in place. Here's the amazing paradox. Rest is when the breakthroughs happen. Have you ever noticed how those best ideas just pop into your head when you're in the shower or drifting off to sleep? That's not an accident. It's a sign of the incredible progress we've made. When you stop forcing it, your brain really shines. Work is where you collect the puzzle pieces. Rest is where the magic happens. When I finally allowed myself to rest, something shocking happened. The present study found that the subject was able to accomplish more in fewer hours and with higher quality. Rather than sustaining an extended period of high-intensity exertion over a 12-hour time frame, I would instead engage in laser-focused periods of activity, each lasting 5 hours, interspersed with periods of rest. The results obtained were of a higher caliber, achieved in a more expeditious manner, and exhibited a superior quality. The importance of rest in recovery became evident, underscoring its role as a crucial element in the healing process. It is therefore necessary to dispel the prevailing narrative. It is imperative to recognize that rest does not equate to weakness. It is imperative to recognize that rest does not equate to indolence. The concept of rest serves as the foundational element that enables the attainment of high performance. Absent this fundamental element, one cannot achieve the level of performance that is considered optimal. The individual in question is merely feigning exhaustion. Turning to the subject of performance, the following discussion will address the scientific principles underlying cerebral function during rest periods. The third chapter is devoted to an examination of the scientific principles underlying the phenomenon of rest in the brain. At this juncture, it is imperative to delve into the scientific aspects of the subject, as it is at this point that the matter becomes particularly intriguing. The act of rest is not merely a matter of personal preference. It is a physiological necessity that is intrinsic to the human organism. Ignoring this aspect of one's identity can be counterproductive, as it is akin to fighting against one's inherent characteristics. The prefrontal cortex, often referred to as the CEO of the brain, is a key player in this process. This component is responsible for the management of focus. the resolution of problems, the process of decision-making, and the cultivation of creativity. This is the chamber where pivotal decisions are made. However, it is imperative to acknowledge the following point. The Chief Executive Officer has been observed to demonstrate a limited degree of stamina. Excessive force can result in glitches. This phenomenon can be illustrated by the tendency to reread specific sentences repeatedly during nocturnal periods. This phenomenon can be explained by the fact that individuals are more prone to make careless mistakes at 2 a.m. than at 9 a.m. This is due to the fact that at 2 a.m., the cognitive resources of the brain are not as effective as at 9 a.m. Concurrently, a series of events is unfolding behind the scenes. The default mode network, DMN, of the brain, which facilitates background processing, becomes active during periods when individuals are not focusing on a specific task. It is during these moments that the creative process flourishes. This is the stage at which connections are established between ideas. That's why you get shower thoughts. This phenomenon, in which ideas emerge during walks, underscores the potential for spontaneous intellectual stimulation in non-traditional settings. The brain is able to function optimally when it is not forced to work under conditions that are not natural to it. The topic of sleep-dependent memory consolidation is a complex one that merits further discussion. This phenomenon, explained by the scientific community, is referred to as the process of sleep-dependent memory consolidation, whereby the brain systematically organizes the information gathered during the day while the individual sleeps. The act of omitting rest periods during the process of studying can be likened to the act of casting one's notes into a pile on the floor. It is imperative to emphasize that procuring the necessary resources in a timely manner can prove to be a challenging endeavor, particularly during periods of heightened urgency. Subsequently, the topic of physical recovery is addressed. It has been demonstrated that sleep is associated with a surge in growth hormone levels. This period is characterized by the reconstruction of muscular tissue, the re-establishment of immune function, and the revitalization of the nervous system. The absence of this element results in the integration of yesterday's challenges into today's, thereby hindering progress. The following assertion is of particular interest. This phenomenon is not merely a matter of personal preference. Rather, it is an intuitive understanding that has been recognized by some of history's most prominent intellectuals. Einstein was renowned for his proclivity for sleep. Da Vinci is known to have engaged in experimentation with polyphasic sleep, a strategy that entailed the practice of taking multiple naps throughout the day to sustain his creative output. In the contemporary sporting landscape, athletes have come to accord rest with a sacred status. A select group of chief executive officers allocate time for leisure activities, including walks, vacations, and moments of personal respite. This phenomenon does not stem from a lack of motivation. Rather, it is a recognition of one's cognitive limitations, akin to recognizing that one's brain does not operate with the same efficiency as a bulldozer. The vehicle under consideration is a Formula One car. The vehicle's acceleration is remarkable. However, this potential is only realized when pit stops are adhered to with precision. The scientific community has reached a consensus that rest is an essential component of a healthy lifestyle. It is important to consider that the grind mode approach may not be the most effective strategy for optimal cognitive function. Now that the scientific principles have been established, the following discussion will examine the various categories of rest that are necessary for optimal health and well-being. The fourth chapter is devoted to an examination of the various types of rest. The concept of rest is often associated with leisure activities such as Netflix marathons. However, authentic rest manifests in a variety of forms, with each contributing to the maintenance of mental acuity. Initially, sleep must be considered. The objective is not merely to repose in a recumbent position, but rather to attain genuine restorative sleep. The duration of 7 to 9 hours is characterized by the body's recovery process, the consolidation of memory, and the re-establishment of emotional equilibrium. This process can be likened to the integration of a system that is at the forefront of technological advancement. Conversely, when individuals engage in frequent and prolonged periods of sleep, they may experience a state of mental and emotional fatigue characterized by reduced energy levels, irritability, and a tendency towards moodiness. Additionally, micro breaks have been identified as a significant factor in the phenomenon. These brief intermissions, occurring sporadically throughout the day, are crucial for maintaining mental well-being. Subjects were allotted 5 minutes to stand, stretch, breathe, or stare at the wall in a state of introspection and contemplation. The term silly may be indicative of a certain degree of power. Indeed, the utilization of micro breaks serves to regulate cerebral temperature, thereby preventing overheating. These are analogous to pit stops in Formula One racing, which prevent the engine from overheating and malfunctioning. Subsequently, the concept of active rest is introduced. This approach, however, has not yielded any significant results. It is an endeavor that deviates from the conventional and fosters a sense of rejuvenation. These activities include walking, physical exercise, culinary endeavors, musical performance, and even engaging in sports, such as tossing a ball with one's canine companion. This phenomenon is not exclusive to the realm of athletics. It is a pervasive aspect of human behavior. It is evident that these individuals do not merely remain stationary during periods when they are not engaged in training. They stretch. These organisms are capable of swimming. Their movement patterns diverge from those observed in other species. This principle is equally applicable to the human brain. Furthermore, the concept of creative rest is also a pertinent consideration. In order to gain inspiration, it is necessary to disengage from one's customary activities and engage in alternative forms of intellectual stimulation. Such activities may include the reading of a novel, the viewing of an exhibition at a gallery, or the listening to music. Your brain is a sponge. The generation of novel outputs is contingent upon the introduction of new inputs. In the event that an individual's only sustenance is that of labor, it is inevitable that they will eventually deplete their reserves. Subsequently, the concept of digital detox is introduced. An objective assessment reveals that perusing social media does not constitute rest. This phenomenon can be characterized as a form of overstimulation that is masked by the appearance of rest and recuperation. This phenomenon can be likened to the attempt to relax while being subjected to the incessant auditory stimulus of an air horn. Authentic digital rest involves the deliberate practice of disconnecting from digital devices, even for brief periods, thereby allowing the brain to recuperate. Finally, emotional rest is essential for optimal recovery. This is a relatively unnoticed yet pivotal aspect. Emotional rest, therefore, is defined as the presence of individuals who do not extract energy from the individual. This entails the ability to decline when necessary. This entails relinquishing the act of feigning comprehensive understanding. Occasionally, the most effective rest is the one that is not taken. This phenomenon can be likened to the attempt to relax while being subjected to the incessant auditory stimulus of an air horn. Authentic digital rest involves the deliberate practice of disconnecting from digital devices, even for brief periods, thereby allowing the brain to recuperate. Finally, emotional rest is essential for the maintenance of overall well-being. This is a relatively unnoticed yet pivotal aspect. Emotional rest, therefore, is defined as the presence of individuals who do not extract energy from the individual. This entails the ability to decline when necessary. It signifies the act of relinquishing the notion of having a comprehensive understanding of the subject matter. In certain cases, the most beneficial action one can take is to cease all activity and simply exist. The concept of rest is not monolithic. It's a toolkit. The possession of a wide array of skills and competencies is associated with enhanced sharpness, calmness, and strength. Should these issues be disregarded, it is important to note that this may result in the events that will subsequently be described. The fifth chapter is concerned with the narrative of burnout, crash, and recovery. The following exposition will delve into the most somber period of the subject's journey. Burnout does not manifest with alarm indicators or visual signals. It sneaks in. Initially, the sensation manifests as a soft whisper, but subsequently it escalates to a profound and overwhelming roar, akin to that of a freight train in full acceleration. In my case, the onset of these symptoms was characterized by the emergence of subtle warning signs. Upon awakening, a state of fatigue would already be present. The endeavor appeared to be analogous to attempting to apprehend smoke with ungloved hands. Performing routine tasks, such as responding to electronic correspondence, was a formidable challenge. However, rather than heeding this advice, I chose to persist in my initial approach. It was hypothesized that an increase in effort would result in a breakthrough. However, the war remained unbroken. I was. Subsequently, a precipitous decline ensued. The day in question remains indelibly etched in my memory. The time was approximately 1100 a.m. The subject was seated at their workspace. Their coffee had been set aside, the inbox was open, the cursor was blinking, and the subject's brain was empty. The emotional impact of this event was so profound that it was akin to the sudden and unexpected cessation of physical life. The elements that previously elicited a sense of profound interest now appeared trivial. The objectives I once pursued appeared to lack depth. The subject reported not experiencing fatigue. I was devoid of content. That's burnout, not tiredness. The system should be shut down. Consequently, I engaged in a radical act, at least by my own standards at the time. The cessation of this practice occurred a full week prior. The absence of electronic communications, scheduled meetings, and productivity-enhancing strategies allows for dedicated periods of rest. Initially, the experience was accompanied by a sense of wrongness, as if the individual were engaging in dishonest practices or falling behind. However, by the third day, I experienced a resurgence in my human feelings. By the fifth day, the generation of ideas had commenced. By the seventh day, the subject reported experiencing elevated energy levels that had not been observed for several months. The following assertion is of particular interest. One of these concepts evolved into a project of notable success. This outcome would not have materialized if I had persisted in exerting myself to the point of exhaustion. It is important to note that burnout does not necessarily result in breakthroughs. Rest does. This perspective is shared in light of the prevalence of individuals experiencing physical and mental fatigue, yet delaying the act of recuperation until the onset of distress. However, it is important to note that the necessity of waiting for the wall is not a prerequisite for this phenomenon. One may elect to opt for a period of repose before being selected. This prompts the following inquiry. The question of how to engage in restful activities that are conducive to productivity remains a subject of interest. The sixth chapter is entitled How to Rest Productively. The subsequent discussion will proceed from a pragmatic perspective. Indeed, rest encompasses more than merely reclining on the sofa at the conclusion of the day. The concept of rest can be engineered. The strategic implementation of rest is a critical component of this approach. The foundation of this process is the establishment of proper sleep hygiene. It is imperative to approach sleep with the same gravity and respect as one would a meeting of the utmost importance. The bedtime and wake time remain unchanged. Cool, dark, quiet room. The ingestion of caffeine in the late afternoon is not recommended. In the interest of enhancing productivity, it is advisable to refrain from using the telephone. The phenomenon of obsessive TikTok use, often referred to as doom scrolling, is not applicable in this context. The human brain requires this signal for optimal function. The necessity of this action is evident. The subsequent phase entails the adoption of work-rest rhythms. It is imperative to disregard the notion of exerting oneself for an extended period of 8 hours. The task at hand is to divide the process into cycles. Some individuals engage in 50 minutes of deep work, followed by 10 minutes of rest. Alternatively, some individuals favor a more intense training approach characterized by 90-minute sprints interspersed with extended recovery periods. The specific choice is inconsequential. The salient issue is the adherence to the established rhythm. The principle of alternating between periods of exertion and recuperation is a fundamental tenet of this approach. It is imperative to engage in active recovery strategies. It is imperative to approach this matter with caution and discernment. Engineer it. It is recommended to allocate time daily for physical activity, such as a brisk walk. The cultivation of a personally fulfilling hobby is a recommended course of action. It is imperative to establish a rejuvenating evening ritual. Athletes do not approach recovery as an optional activity. The programming of these devices is a deliberate act. This same principle should be applied to the mental domain. It is imperative to establish digital boundaries. In the case of an incessant auditory stimulus, the subject experiences a state of perpetual alertness. Make rules. The act of taking a phone call or sending a text message during a meal is strictly prohibited, as is the use of a phone in the bed. One potential solution is to observe a weekly digital Sabbath. Initially, the sensation resembles that of phantom limb syndrome. This phenomenon is characterized by a sense of profound inner peace. The construction of restful environments is paramount. The human brain has a tendency to establish associations between specific locations and particular activities. In the event that one's bed is also being utilized as an office, it is not surprising that sleep is being affected. It is imperative to allocate distinct areas for specific purposes. A workspace is necessary for professional activities, while an armchair is suitable for reading. A bed is required for rest. Finally, it is essential to learn the power of assertive communication. A significant proportion of the population does not experience exhaustion from professional obligations. The phenomenon of overcommitment has led to a state of exhaustion among individuals, resulting in a need for recovery and rejuvenation. It is imperative to safeguard one's energy, as it is a precious resource that should be conserved and cherished. The following is a concise recap checklist. The subject's 7-day rest sprint, consistent sleep and wake times, and micro breaks every hour are key elements of the study. It is recommended that individuals engage in a walk after lunch, abstain from keeping their phones in their beds, and commit to one deliberate no to their daily routine in order to conserve their energy. It is important to note that rest does not necessarily result in a decline in academic performance. It sets you up to leap ahead. It is at this juncture that the broader context becomes pertinent. This issue is not merely a personal concern. It has broader implications that extend beyond individual experiences. This phenomenon pertains to all individuals. The 7th chapter is characterized by a paradigm shift, which is often referred to as the rest revolution. This phenomenon extends beyond the scope of individual productivity. This phenomenon can be attributed to cultural influences. For several decades, there has been a pervasive societal embrace of grind culture. It is imperative to prioritize sleep when one is experiencing a state of death. The notion that being busy is indicative of importance is a pervasive one. Hustle equals holy. However, it must be acknowledged that the current system is not without its flaws. A paradigm shift is imperative to address this imbalance. It is imperative to consider an alternative metric for evaluating success, one that does not rely on the quantity of hours spent in a given activity. Instead, this alternative metric should prioritize the clarity of ideas, the precision of focus, and the quality of energy. It is important to conceptualize a society in which individuals prioritize the dissemination of insights over the expression of weariness. In contrast, the concept of family was not sacrificed on the altar of relentless ambition, and rest was regarded as a form of wisdom rather than a sign of weakness. The following report contains positive information. The scientific consensus and empirical evidence support this position. Organizations that prioritize genuine rest have been shown to experience enhanced productivity and superior creativity. Athletes who engage in recovery practices tend to demonstrate superior performance outcomes in comparison to those who train continuously without respite. Creators who disengage from their projects tend to produce work that is more original and audacious. The concept of rest does not inherently imply a decrease in pace or intensity. This approach is conducive to achieving victory. However, the following challenge must be acknowledged. The revolution is initiated by the individual. The world will not offer its approval simply by expressing its indifference. Indeed, certain individuals may regard such a choice as indicative of indolence. This phenomenon can be attributed to their continued adherence to a now obsolete system. The construction of the new one is underway. The following constitutes a call to action. It is imperative to join the rest of the revolution. It is imperative to regard rest not as a vulnerability, but rather as a strategic asset. It is imperative to safeguard one's moments of respite, as they are of paramount importance. It is imperative to incorporate rhythms of recovery into one's lifestyle, akin to the manner in which work schedules are structured. It is imperative to acknowledge the practical implications of this phenomenon. The assertion that rest is a weapon is a noteworthy point that merits further examination. If one is in agreement, a transformation of the prevailing culture may be considered. The objective is to establish rest as the new flex. It is imperative to recognize that rest does not equate to retreat. Rest is strategy. Adopting this approach has been shown to enhance productivity and foster unstoppable momentum.